Hello and welcome to tonight's episode of The Bottom Line on Air. My name is Claire Sullivan and I will be your host. Each week we will explore our campus's current events and breaking news stories, and we are using this space to dig deeper and to elevate our discourse and understanding and to put faces to names on the FSU campus. Tonight we are joined by Ms. Robin Wynder, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs, who will reflect on Women's History Month with us before we chat with Carlee Garrity, President of Spectrum, FSU's LGBTQIA+ student organization, about feminine and trans inclusivity on campus. In addition to our guests, we will break down the historic SGA election results. Our first guest this evening is Ms. Robin Wynder, Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs. Ms. Wynder has been an active member of our campus community for decades, serving on numerous diversity, equity, and inclusion committees in particular. She is joining us to chat about her career advancement at Frostburg State University in celebration of Women's History Month. Thank you so much, Ms. Wynder, for joining us today.
Thank you, Claire. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so glad. So let's start at the beginning. Where did you grow up? What did you study? And what was your path before you came to FSU?
So I grew up in Baltimore City. I studied, when I came to Frostburg, I studied psychology as an undergraduate and counseling psychology in the master's program. When I came to Frostburg, I really didn't know what my path was. I had so many choices and so many interests that it was difficult for me to narrow it down to one major. But I did start off as a speech and theater major as a first year student.
So then, of course, once you got to FSU, you've served in numerous capacities besides being Assistant Vice President for Student Affairs. What was your favorite role that you've played on campus?
My favorite role was when I was in student support services. I absolutely loved it. My strength lies in one-on-one relationships, helping others develop to their full potential. And so working in SSS, I had direct contact with a caseload of students that I started with their freshman year and worked with them throughout graduation. I loved that. I absolutely, and I teased that when I retire, then I'm gonna go back and work in student support services.
So during your time at FSU, the campus has definitely grown and changed. What's one area that you think our campus has improved the most during your time here? And what's one area that you think still may need some focus and attention?
So coming from my current perspective of DEI, I would say one of the areas of largest growth is in our student population. When I was a student decades ago, we were less than, Black students were less than 5% of the population. And I don't even know if there were other racialized identity students. And this year, we currently stand total minority student population around 47%. We have been as high as 50.1% of the population. So I think that's been excellent growth. We've been negatively impacted over the last few years, but it's still a decent population and as far as student diversity goes. Where we still struggle is with the faculty and staff diversity. You have such a large Black student body and a very, very small Black faculty staff representation. And that's really the area we have to put a lot of focus in. All kinds of studies prove how important and beneficial it is for students to see themselves reflected in their instructors and their mentors. And that would lead itself to greater retention and higher graduation rates.
If you don't mind me asking, who, for that area that we need to work on, which I agree with, what do you think is a potential solution to that? Like, who does the responsibility to bring in a more diverse staff lie on, and what do you think they could be doing differently?
One thing that I can say is I've talked and worked with HR a lot, Heather Killen and Lisa Hirsch, and it's a priority for them. And so I'm hoping within the next couple of months, be able to sit down with them and maybe work out a plan that helps put a stronger emphasis on it for search committees. You know, every position we have open, there's search committees developed. And while I think there should be representation of marginalized populations on those search committees, it shouldn't be necessary in order for the job to get done. Mm-hmm. Who's ever on the search committee should understand this is a priority, mm-hmm. and this is how we pursue it. And that starts with the writing of the ad and the placement of the ads. Who are you reaching? How aggressively are you reaching into populations like HBCUs and the larger metropolitan areas, leaning on alumni, mm-hmm. and professional contacts. So you can't just place an ad and then hope it works. You have to put in a lot of work, especially because of where we're located. Mm-hmm. Like it takes a bit to draw somebody to this area, but usually once we can get them here physically, then they're intrigued. Mm-hmm. The next step would be what support lies, what support is in place once they get here. You cannot bring, just like our students, we should not have a large number of racialized students on campus without having sufficient support in place before they get here. Same thing I would say for faculty and staff. So we're working on it. Right. Yes, it's one of the highest priorities of the president of the University Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And as we work on our DEI strategic plan, it will be in there.
In thinking about Women's History Month, who is one woman that has been an example to you at times in your career when you might have faced adversity?
So I'm fortunate enough to have a few women who I look up to, who I have more of a sister friend relationship with. Mm-hmm. But there's one woman in particular, her name is Joyce Shabazz, and she is a co-director of the National Coalition Building Institute and a senior leader, and I'm on that senior leadership team as well. And I have a long-standing relationship with her. She's tall, curvaceous, dark-skinned, has a sister locks, lives up in Vermont, of all places, on a mountain with her husband. She's fierce. She's so intelligent, mm-hmm. and she's so passionate about the work that she does. And she helps keep me centered. Whenever I'm feeling pushed up against it and I just need a listening ear or a wise word, I will pick up the phone and call Joyce. And one of the things I really appreciate is that she will always give me advice, but she always makes it perfectly clear in the way she does it that I already know what I'm doing. I just needed that supportive friend to get through it. So that's one of a few different women who I'm able to look up to.
And finally, in your new role as Assistant Vice President, what are some of the initiatives that you're the most excited about and want to share with our audience?
Okay, so I mentioned already that we're going to be working on a DEI strategic plan. I don't know if you recall, in the fall, we put a campus climate survey out to the campus. And then last week earlier this week, we had 2 focus groups to gather more data and intelligence to support that campus climate survey. And going forth, we're going to work on a strategic plan. And my understanding from conferences I've attended and people I've talked to, it's going to take 5 to 7 years for us to get there. Mm-hmm. But the more intentional you are, the more time and effort you put into something, then the more it's likely to take. We don't want to make quick changes that, next year it goes back to the same. We need to make changes in our climate so that all of our students, faculty, staff, our whole campus community are comfortable in living and working and learning in a diverse environment. And we're putting out graduates who go out into the world and are able to work effectively in those environments and create some real change. So developing a strategic plan and how we are going to be moving forward. The term originally used was towards the anti-racist campus. Mm-hmm. But from a recent conference I've been in, I picked up another tagline that I love, and that's reaching for inclusive excellence. And I just love that. I think it says it all. And that's what we're working for, Claire.
Wonderful, thank you. So that was my last question for you, Ms. Wynder. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening. Our campus would quite literally be lost without your institutional knowledge. It was an absolute pleasure to be able to celebrate Women's History Month with you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Happy Women's History Month to you.
The Student Government Association at Frostburg State University held their 2021-2022 academic year elections last week. The results, announced on Friday, March 26th, are of historic note. First, the total number of votes cast, 465 in total, is over 150 more votes cast than last year's SGA election. Though only an average of 10% of students vote in each election, this semester over 13% voted this year. The turnout represents the highest in well over a decade. As we mentioned during the Bottom Line on Air's special SJ election episode last week, this year's race, having a contested president and vice presidential ticket, was also unique. The last time this happened was in 2013. The final votes, 288 for Ariana Ward and Esmerai Reyes versus 177 cast for Delaney Blubaugh and Michael Hollingsworth, meant a win for Ward and Reyes. Their election is also historic, as President-elect Ward will be only the third Black woman to represent the student body as SGA president, and Vice President-elect Reyes' election represents the first Latinx student to hold one of the two top SGA positions. Besides the historic nature of the election, the results suggested a renewed interest in SGA, despite a somewhat poor recent reputation. Indeed, many of the changes that led to the expansion in eligibility to run for president were in the making over last summer, when students expressed frustration with the perception that the president of SGA was hand-selected by their peers long before students approached the voting booth. Hearing these concerns, SGA amended their constitution early in the fall 2020 semester. This allowed for a contested election and, to many extents, a new passion and interest in student government. In addition to Ward and Reyes' election, the following students were elected for the upcoming school year: Lauren Nordquist, treasurer; on-campus Senator Jasmine Smiley, Darius Brown, Renee Edwards Evans, Joy Fitzgerald, Lucas O'Brien, and Allison Russo; off-campus Senators Jenna Griffith, Delaney Blubaugh, Chris Escobar, Michael Hollingsworth, Jericho Yance, Dylan Hill, and Thomas Forrest; at-large Senators Marianne Calderon, Jasmine LaPrade, Sati Ramdat, Max Hancock, Madison Davis, and Nicole Chu. A total of 10 seats on the Student Senate are unfilled even after the election. They will be filled by interview within the first few weeks of the fall 2021 semester. Interested students should watch their email when school returns in August. SGA will celebrate a changing of officers during their Thursday, April 22nd meeting at 7:30 p.m. via Microsoft Teams. Outgoing SGA President Noah DeMichael will join the Bottom Line on Air for our May 5th episode to reminisce about the 2020 to 2021 school year. Be sure to check it out in a few weeks. Our final guest is Carlee Garrity, president of Spectrum, which is FSU's LGBTQIA student club. The group, which is known for their on-campus activism and very fun events prior to the pandemic, has been active on diversity, equity, and inclusion issues on campus, including menstruation product availability, hate speech bias incidents, and in promoting intersectional approaches to the Black Lives Matter and Trans Lives Matter movements. And with so much to discuss, thank you, Carlee, for being with us this evening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So Spectrum has had their hands in many on-campus initiatives, as I mentioned a moment ago. What are some of the projects that your group is most actively working on at the moment?
So our two biggest projects at the moment are expanding non-gendered bathroom access around campus and overhauling the name and pronoun system for campus and class rosters. If you've been on campus, you've probably noticed that we have very few non-gendered bathrooms. To my knowledge, only Lane, CCIT, and a few of the residence halls have non-gendered bathrooms, and they're all single occupancy sort of family style bathrooms, which is not necessarily a bad thing because they're great for those who like privacy or differently abled people who need the space and ground floor accessibility, but it shouldn't be the only option. Students should have the option to use any standard multiple stall bathroom of their choice, regardless of the sign that may be on the door. Well, we're still in the research and planning stage of this process, but we hope to make a few physical changes in the next 2 years or so. And as for the name and pronoun changes, it's a pretty standard practice at most universities, especially USM universities, to have Canvas have a built-in option for changing your name or adding your pronouns in sort of a comment or bio section on your profile. But it seems like Frostburg has just chosen not to utilize that option. So we want to bring that away or bring that back to Canvas and kind of take the burden away from students to have to correct their professor or, ask for that basic respect of using the proper name and pronouns.
Right. Okay. I didn't know that Canvas had that or that FSU is excluding it. It's worth mentioning that many of these goals are very intersectional, meaning that they impact numerous marginalized groups on campus across lines of race and gender and sexual identity. Was this always the way the group operated? And do you have any reflections on that approach?
Yeah, so Spectrum was started by two amazing Black students way before my time here at Frostburg. So I like to think that intersectionality was always the goal of the organization. Spectrum has worked with a lot of diverse student organizations over the years, and I'd really like to continue that during my time as president. The LGBTQ community, it's a really diverse community. And that should always be reflected in the work we do because LGBTQ issues affect people of all races, genders, ages, religions, cultures. And it's exactly the same for Frostburg. It's a really diverse school.
Right. So how does Spectrum approach celebrating something like Women's History Month? Do you have any advice for ensuring that our commemoration of Women's History Month, women in general, doesn't erase marginalized women, like especially trans women?
Yeah, so anytime we talk about the history of LGBTQIA in America, we can't emphasize enough how we would not be where we are today without the Black women and Black trans women who paved the way for us. Women like Marsha P. Johnson, Stormy DeLavery, I really hope I'm saying her last name correctly, Audre Lorde, Barbara Jordan, and so many more women. These women led, mobilized, educated, inspired generations. And along the years, people have tried to push these women aside, especially with Marsha P. Johnson. There's been an argument presented about how it was actually gay white men who threw the first brick at Stonewall. And there's been hundreds of different accounts of what happened at Stonewall. And it's fine to seek the truth, but you can't discredit what these women did. They were instrumental in the demonstration and they deserve to be honored as such.
Absolutely. So one of the barriers to understanding these issues seems to be terminology and shifting preferences within the LGBTQIA community. What resources do you recommend for those of us who are trying to navigate and educate ourselves about these terms and identities?
So this is a barrier that I personally hit all the time. I'm constantly listening to discourse and reading to get a better understanding of new terms and identities, especially from an education standpoint, through Safe Zone and through leading an LGBTQ organization. So it's not something that anyone should ever be ashamed of. You know, as long as you're making an effort to be respectful and understanding, you're doing your part. My favorite resource personally is the Human Rights Campaign. Their website has a wide range of educational materials, resources. They have a constantly updating list of vocabulary and terminology, a vetted list of LGBTQ professional and student associations, healthcare resources, workplace resources. They're really good at what they do.
That's great. Thank you. So thinking about like our campus for a moment, I think we can agree that FSU is in a period of change and flux. So as a sophomore with a few more years to go, what are some of the policy changes that you're advocating for both as Spectrum president and as a campus leader?
So I would really like to see more students of all backgrounds being brought to the table for issues big or small. Academics, housing, student life, these are all decisions that should not be made in private or behind closed doors. Frostburg is, as I said, an incredibly diverse school in a not very diverse area. So the administration really needs to take directions from its students when it comes to these important decisions. You know, Frostburg is making huge strides in the push for expanding DEI, and I really hope to see it continue before I graduate.
So finally, as we are celebrating many amazing women in our lives this month, who is one woman that has greatly impacted your life and your work?
So this will probably sound a bit cliche, but it definitely has to be my mom. She hasn't exactly had an easy life, but she's worked really hard to support me and my grandparents. She's a single mom and now an only child, so it's a tough job. But she's always been incredibly supportive of me. When I came out, a lot of people in my life weren't very accepting of it, but my mom didn't have a single thing to say about it, except that she would always love and support me no matter what. Every project I've started, worked on, every career idea I've explored, no matter what, she supported it, no questions asked. So I don't tell her as often as I should, but I'm very, very thankful for her.
That's amazing. Carlee, this has been an extremely enjoyable and educational conversation. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this evening. And we really look forward to seeing what you and Spectrum accomplish over the next several months. Take care, stay safe, and thank you again so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great night.
Thank you, you too. We want to thank our guests, Robin Wynder and Carlee Garrity, for taking the time to celebrate Women's History Month with us. We hope that you will join us next week when we chat with Dr. Alicia Rominsky and Ray McGuire about the Department of Communications' newest initiative, and Luke Vogt, a lead actor in the Theater and Dance Department's upcoming show, Spoon River. This show is a collaboration between FSU TV3 and The Bottom Line. To stay connected with us, you can find The Bottom Line at thebottomlinenews.com and on our Facebook and Twitter. FSU TV3 can also be found on social media and at FROSTBURG.EDU/FSU TV3. Thank you for joining us. My name is Claire Sullivan, and this has been The Bottom Line on Air. Good night.